Tell me your origin story. How did this get started for you? What is Chelsko?
I'm a bit of an oxymoron, an anomaly, if you will. I grew up, first of all, in a very conservative Christian household, which would almost seem that they're from the South when they're absolutely not. In the middle of Malibu, California, which is probably the most liberal place in the entire universe. So I was the ugly duckling straight out the womb. Like I just stuck out like a sore thumb. I was that token Christian kid. Um, and that shaped me in so many ways. When I was younger, like looking back at my younger self, I wish I would have embraced that, but instead I fought it, right? You feel different. You feel like not accepted and not cool and not pretty. And, I had kids at a very young age being like, oh, you're allowed to wear makeup, just very ostracized by the culture I was in. Now, my nature is very rebellious. And what I've learned as I grow is a lot of people, two people can come from the exact same family, exact same place, but part of it is just the cells we're given, right? The brain that we have. And mine is by nature a rebellious one. So it actually spurred me into being more Christian, right? Because that was my identity. And so the more I had people telling me, you should try smoking weed, you should cuss, you should this or that, I went the other direction and built this identity in sticking it to the man and being like, no. And then what happened is my whole world flipped when I started going to private schools. Because then all of a sudden I was with a bunch of Christians. So now I'm not proving anything to them. So there goes my identity right out the door, right? Because all of this is to say, and it continues to basically we relearn the same lesson over and over and over until we listen, right? Finding my identity in some other thing than God, even in Christianity. Even Christianity isn't God, right? And so I had to relearn, and pride came before the fall so many times. Um, and I continued to try to control my fate, even though I loved the Lord, even though I, grew up in a Christian household and was given this wisdom and had a relationship very young with the Lord and dug into that and found it for myself. I continued to try to be my stubborn self and, make way with my own path, beat to my own drum. And that has led to a very exciting, but at times difficult life for me that wasn't necessary. A lot of the problems I brought upon myself by making decisions that I thought were going to be the right way, dating the wrong people, putting myself in situations that no one told me to do that. I mean, culture does, right? But, and I learned lessons and I grew up. I feel like I grew up very slowly and then all at once because I was so sheltered up through high school. So I was sheltered but in public schools, and then I was in private schools, but still sheltered, and well, sheltered even more because now I'm in private schools. And then I went to private colleges, and then I came out, and the world was like, guess what? It's wild out here, and you're not prepared. You have no idea, and you think that you're a perfect little Christian who didn't drink and was saving yourself for marriage, and that no one can hurt you and that no one can bring you down because you're that good. And I just fell smack on my face and was humbled. As my business partner Kate would say, took a big piece of humble pie, right? And so I spent years after college, between college and now, um, finding myself and finding my identity and finding my voice. Ironically, singing has been my career. I went to school for theater, so I thought it was going to go that way. And then the Lord kind of pivoted me towards music. And then I started getting in these bad relationships. And music was my outlet. Music was my therapy to kind of navigate this crazy story that I was going through. And as I was just finding out what the world's really like, what people are like when they're not the safety and comfort of my home. And my family on both sides were just strong, Christians and very simple. Like, the worst thing that happened was probably like my cousin leaving the house and going to live with my aunt. Like, that's as wild as it got, like there was no drama, no alcohol, no, no abuse, no, like I had no concept of the darkness of the world. And having the savior complex coming from a home that is, again, about being Christian and loving on people, I kind of warped that in a way. And I mean, that's a whole nother episode, but my childhood upbringing, for whatever reason, led to me to have this savior complex. And instead of getting my value from the Lord, I got it from thinking I needed to help other people. And as a barrel will turn, bad with one bad apple, if you have one bad apple and only one good apple, that the good apple is effed, So I continued putting myself in situations where I thought that I was going to fix them, whether that be friendships or relationships, or I learned the lesson over and over, as we will until the Lord shows us, and or until we learn, rather. And I just had phenomenal experiences along the way, even with the craziness, even with the not so great decisions, even with the selfishness and thinking I was in control, naivety. The whole time, like, I don't look back at a single period of my life, and even when I was being abused, I don't look at a single period of it and be like, that really sucked. In the moment, I was like, God's got me. Like, I'm having a great time. I had no idea like how much of a great time I wasn't really like how much better my life could have been. Because I just am a very silver lining girly. And but I had enough experiences where I realized enough is enough and I do deserve better when it comes to love. And that the biggest thing is my savior complex kicked in when I was on MTV, and I realized thousands of girls are going to watch me and they're going to see what I am allowing and they're going to allow it. And then that's on me. And that burden, I took very seriously. And it works this way a lot for us people, right? All of a sudden, when you're hurting someone else, it's more serious than when you are hurting yourself. When something you're doing, oh, I'm only hurting myself. But when you realize you're hurting someone else, it kind of wakes you up. So that was my first kind of wake up call. I continued to have this be in the cycle of abuse, but finally during COVID walked away. And along this whole way, I'm making beautiful music because, the best artists, look at Taylor Swift, all of her songs are about breakups. They're not about, I'm so glad it's going well. I got married last night. Like, that's not the story. Yeah. So I was very blessed to be able to also have really incredible producers and really positive people in my life, alongside the few negative choices. And so I poured myself into music. I was able to be still cast on some shows somehow, like very almost in a way living in two lives, right? But after COVID, when COVID hit, it was a big this is it moment. And I went home with my family, and halfway through COVID, I was like, I need to run. I need to run for my life, or I'm going to go back to what I just worked so hard to get away from. And so I fled in the middle of COVID, the worst time ever, drove across the country and moved to Connecticut. Continued working on my music there. And then after a period of time of really being alone and finding that I really enjoy, well, I had my friend, but she was at work, and what I learned to be okay alone. I didn't date. I didn't have any communication with men at all. I didn't really have any friends other than my one friend, so I'd see her when she came home from work. I learned to enjoy solitude. I learned to really like dive into that relationship with the Lord and my music, and that was it. And it was simple and it was beautiful, and I didn't rely on any other outside source for my happiness. And so when I came back to LA, I was in a much better headspace and I got into my first healthy relationship. And then that ended 2 years ago, and I moved to Seattle for an even further movement in my process, which you could say was spurred on by a boy still, because my ex had moved to Seattle and I was like, ding, ding, that's a good idea. But I had been applying for all these jobs, randomly, of course, get a job offer in Seattle. And I was like, well, fancy seeing you here, just show up not too long after he moved there. Ironically, though, like, and that's how the Lord moves sometimes. He'll put a little incentive to get you to do something, and you think you're going for that, but you're really not. I probably saw him a handful of times living there for a year, but I needed to prove to myself that not only did I not need all these outside sources, but I didn't even need like my family. Like I didn't need anyone. Like I needed to have that bad bitch moment where I was like, I don't need anyone. And I did it for a year. And the rehumbling of that experience is that at the end of it, I was like, okay, we get it. We get it. Everyone gets it. You can do it by yourself. We know. But like you do, you need people. You need fellowship. You need family. You need love. It was very lonely. And I realized, okay, yes, I am capable. The point has been proven. You can go home now, kind of thing. So I moved back home, and I lost my job because they just went and let a ton of people go. Best thing that has ever happened to me. And I'm telling you, like, I look back on my life and there are some pivotal moments where very few of them, where I was like, this actually sucks. One of them was right before I got that job. I didn't get the job that I really wanted. And I remember sitting on the floor and something else happened. Like my car broke and just all these things happened in one day. And I just remember being like, this is the worst day of my life. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because then immediately I got that job to Seattle and that changed my life. And then I lost my job in Seattle. And again, it was like, but at this point, I learned to be like, okay, well, I guess, sink or swim. And it was the best thing ever happened to me, because then I decided I'm going to go full force and just focus on my social media, which I had been doing for some time for my music, but I didn't really trust myself to live off of my own earnings just from Instagram and music and the things I wanted to do. I always had a side hustle that I felt like I needed, as a little, like as they say in Think and Grow Rich, burn all your bridges. And I hadn't. And so the Lord burnt that last one for me, and it threw me in the deep end, and I began swimming like a freaking Olympic swimmer. And I was like, oh my gosh, never would have known I could do this. And at that point, I realized, why am I doing music? I do music to help people, to help young girls hopefully learn from my stories. And then I also realized, if I've been basically helping men improve their lives by dating them for years, why do I keep doing something I'm good at for free? So I decided I'm just going to start life coaching. Maybe they'll actually listen. Like I was like sitting there thinking, if I can, and because I look back at every one of these people I was with, and their lives did improve, some very drastically. I at one point dragged one of them to go get this job that changed his life. It was a phenomenal job he never would have gone to if I didn't drag this grown man kicking and screaming. And so I was like, imagine if I used this gift and this desire to help people better themselves, who actually want it, who are paying me to do it and proving to themselves that they're willing to show up. And so I did. I started this company, met my business partner within a month, and it just took off. And here we are now. And actually, I think this is my first time telling that story, since everything has changed in the past 6 months. I had an Instagram that I wasn't using that had 4,000 followers. It is at 106,000 followers now. Every door has just flung open while I just sat there versus the rest of my life me banging on doors and they just didn't open because God was like, that's not the right one. And this one, this phase of my life, all I'm doing is showing up.
Riches, when they come so fast in such large quantities that one wonders where they were hiding all of those lean years, right? And from what you're describing to me in this kind of progression and story, and thank you for covering all of that, it sounds like you hopped into, for lack of better words, alignment.
What's going on, guys? If you like that clip right there, you will love the full interview. You can check that out right there. I'll see you on the next video. Oh, and subscribe, because we got a lot of big things coming up in the near future.